Porch with old BDL and my good friend, old friend, dear friend, one of the best woodsmen in the world, Mr. Newnan, Cooter Ray Hall. How you doing, Newnan?
I'm doing all right. I'm so glad to be here talking with you on this fine, pretty day, this pretty Sunday afternoon.
It is a pretty day. What we want to talk about today, Newnan, we want to talk about the old days, back when me and you were first starting hunting back. I can remember.
Young, we were kids.
I was 14, 15. You was 9 or 10 years old when we used to go down in the middle of the swamp with Oscar Thomas and Oscar's beagle buggy. He'd have a trailer full of beagles and turn them loose in the swamp and drive deer. And that's the way we learned how to hunt deer.
That was the most exciting thing that ever was to me, because there really wasn't any deer at the time. You know, there wasn't that many deer in the area in our rural.
It wasn't that many deer anywhere except in that swamp, in that river swamp.
For some reason they were down there. I guess it just was the terrain and all, and it probably wasn't too much deer hunting went on down there, and they kind of multiplied.
It was kind of a social thing, and it was something that the adults did, and it was Oscar Thomas, J.O. Jones, Ezra Allen, Mr. Buffett Hollinger. It was those guys would load us up, take us to those woods, and we'd have Vienna sausage and crackers at dinner time. They taught us gun safety. They taught us everything to be safe, but they introduced us to the outdoors with dog hunting. Now let's go over a dog hunt. Lee Thomas we'd have your drivers and your stand, and everybody on the stand. Tell them about how we used to do it now.
Well, we'd go out on like a road or something down through the woods, and you'd let somebody out in a certain spot, then you go down the road about 150, 200 yards, you let somebody else out, and you tell them, y'all don't get off your stand, just stay right here and don't shoot back toward, where we let somebody else out.
And don't leave that stand.
No, don't leave that stand. And just be watching and listen for the dogs, but I guarantee you that the deer ain't going to be right there in front of the dogs. He's going to be ahead of them dogs.
Old Larry Abernathy's tuned in. Larry Abernathy, he used to hunt with us a time or two.
Oh, yeah, old Larry, yeah.
All right, well, we did those drive hunts down there in the swamp, and it was just so much fun, and we practiced safety. And I never will forget, if you could hear the beagles coming. I mean, that swamp, that bottom was just like an echo, man. You could hear those beagles, and you could hear them coming, and you'd get so excited. And by the time a deer would run across.
Oh, he was gone.
He was gone. You wouldn't even have time to get your gun up. And old Oscar Thomas, Mr. Oscar, if the action got slow, he'd go between the standers and he'd shoot up in the air 3 times, say, "Here he comes, here he comes." That was a good old days.
That really was. I remember that, and I got a photo somewhere with Mr. J.O. Jones and myself and a big old deer hanging there on the rack. I don't know where that picture is, but I remember that. I was about 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, that's right. That's when it was. Every Saturday during hunting season, that's what we would do. And if you missed a deer, you got your shirt tail cut off, and if you killed a deer, you didn't get blood on your face, you got your head dumped in the gut pile.
That used to be the tradition. It probably still is in places.
But that's the way it was back in that was in the mid 60s,
right,
to the mid 70s when all that was going on, and then around 75 to the mid 80s is when the commercial deer hunt, when we really got deer in this area.
That's when the deer population exploded.
Yeah.
And let's see, we were talking, I think the paper mill come into existence with some of the clear cutting. Had something to do with it. And it was just deer, just
habitat change.
And something else was they planted soybeans on every little acre it was. Boy, them deer loved them soybeans, and that helped the population too.
But now, Newnan, you were an expert at stalk hunting. You was a natural hunter, and that's what I want to talk about. Because people are just not exposed to hunting today like they were back in the day when you and Johnny Wilson and Randy Daly and Tommy Lawler and you guys, y'all were hunters, but you were more outdoorsmen than you were hunters. You went to the woods to hunt a deer, or hunt a turkey, or hunt a squirrel or a rabbit. But before you hunted that squirrel or rabbit, you knew those woods, you knew the nature of that critter. And talk about that. Take us on a Newnan Hall deer hunt when you was 10, 11, 12, when you first started hunting.
Daddy go buy me 3 or 4 buckshot, but old shotgun we had.
There wasn't no rifle back in them days.
And we'd go out. You'd go out by yourself and just ease down a ridge or maybe a bottom, and you walk about 50 yards and you'd stop and just stand there, just freeze, and stand there for 10 minutes. Just wait and listen. You hear that deer walking, maybe see something moving, and that's how you hunted. You were just stalking, but you let the deer do the moving. You didn't. If you went just recklessly down through the woods, you weren't doing it good. You had to kind of hunt. Remember how we used to kind of hunt like an Indian?
Yeah.
And just ease down through there, and it was all hardwood. It was big old trees, beautiful. There's still some places like that, but mostly that's all gone. But you'd ease down through the woods and just wait. Just look. Sometimes a deer'd stop. He'd sense a little danger, and sooner or later he gonna flip that ear or something. You see that white on him, or that tail would flip a little bit, or he'd move a foot a little bit. You'd see him, and you'd sit there and wait on him. And if he didn't come on up there, we'd give you a good clean shot. And you'd say, "Well, that's all right, old boy. We got another day. We'll try you again."
That was hunting back in those days. Y'all stayed still. Y'all stalked, and you waited for that deer to move, and you watched that deer move, and you didn't spook that deer, did you, Newnan? That was woodsmanship. You became one with your woods.
That was always my motto: is let the deer do the moving.
Yeah.
And that was another motto I had, which we'll get to this subject here in a little bit. It was turkey hunting. You let the turkey do the moving, because if you do the moving, the hunt's over.
They gone. And if you said a while ago, you waited to that deer to move, and then he had to get into shotgun range.
You just had to be patient.
And if he did not get into shotgun range, you would ease out of the woods and go back the next day.
Yeah, you didn't push him.
That was real hunting back in those days.
You didn't like attack. You just let nature do its thing. You know, you didn't.
You understood the woods. You understood the critter. You had to. That was hunting. That's what hunting is all about. And that's the way you were raised. And I can honestly say, I don't know too many people that are better woodsmen than you are. When I think about my career, and I'm certainly not a hunter or a fisherman, but I've been around a lot of them in my life, and I consider Joe Champion, Randy Daly, who was our dear friend this past, you, Tommy Lawler, Lee Thomas.
Many of them.
It's some of the best woodsmen that I've ever been around.
Anybody we left out, we apologize.
And it is definitely different today than it was back in those days. That's why I wanted you to share some of these stories with us today.
It's a 180 turnaround, but as I came on up through the 60s, I got a little older, and which I was doing a lot of fall turkey hunting, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But Mr. Bill Daly and Mr. J.T. Daly and Randy was young, a little older than me. He had a lot more experience with that deer dog running than I did. But I loved it so much, and I finally, Mr. Bill would come up there on a Saturday morning and pick me up.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go out to Nina Hill, and they'd put them dogs in. And Lord, it was on there.
Newnan, you and Randy used to tell me a story about a dog. I think Mr. Bill owned the dog that would only run a buck deer. Anything to that?
That is true. It was a long-legged, let me see, I believe that was a blue tick. No, it was a black and tan. It was a black and tan, and his name was Black Boy. That's what they named that dog. And he wouldn't run nothing but a buck. If you heard him coming,
it was a buck.
It was a buck coming. There ain't no doe. He ain't. If them dogs, the whole pack of dogs was running a buck and 2 or 3 does, and that buck forked off, them other dogs would go with them does, but he going with that buck.
He was gonna chase the buck, and y'all knew him, and you knew each dog's bay, every one of them.
Right.
Y'all knew
Yeah.
dogs.
You could hear them way off. You could tell what dog was what. You knew what was coming, and couldn't shoot does back then. It was all bucks, you know. And boy, it was so exciting, but it took some experience learning about deer hunting with deer dogs, a deer drive. A young fella, I had them. They about run up in my face when I was young and just get away. They were so fast I couldn't quick draw on them. But over the years I learned, you know, how to do that.
Larry Abernathy said his daddy had a dog like that. Old Blue wouldn't run nothing but a buck.
That's what I'm talking about, Larry.
But those were the good old days. Now that's the way we were raised up hunting, and then in the 70s, I know we bought the bait shop in 1979. That's when things started getting so commercialized.
Yeah.
And that's when we got the Pine Barren Hunting Club.
Yeah, they hadn't quite got to the big hunting club thing yet, but it was headed in that direction.
Right.
And like you say, we got the Pine Barren Hunting Club. We were lucky enough to where we could run dogs on that 600 acres, but we could hunt on places around it too, you know, and we didn't have to worry about losing dogs too much.
A couple of stories I want to share with our audience about the Pine Barren Hunting Club. And what year did you get out of the national? Did you go to basic training?
Oh, when I went in that,
when you went,
it was in the early 80s.
Early 80s, you went to the National Guard. You went to basic training. You come back, you were buff, man. And I remember during hunting season, I would ride down there and stop at Jack Jr.'s cattle gap and listen for the dogs, you know.
Right.
Because y'all would have the dogs turned loose. And I never will forget that morning. It was after daylight. I was sitting there, and I heard the dogs coming, and that road, you could see down that road a half a mile along.
That dirt road,
and I knew the deer was fixing to cross the road. And the deer came across. It was a doe. I'll never forget it. And then here come the pack of dogs. I don't remember if they were long-legged hounds.
They was beagles.
Beagles. And then here comes Newnan behind the dog. You was in shape running with the dog. You remember that?
Yeah, I could never about outrun the dogs then.
Oh, that was some good old days. Now, I want you to tell the story, too, and I'll never forget this. That's when I had Big Daddy's Bait Shop. That was in 79, 80, 81, 82, in the early 80s, late 70s. And you and Johnny Wilson killed the biggest deer I've ever seen. I believe that deer, we never weighed him, but I believe that deer weighed 300 pounds. Tell me that.
300
You remember that story? You remember
yes,
that story?
I do.
Tell that story.
Well, Johnny and I really don't need to tell all exactly how this went, but we're going to say Johnny and I were hunting out of a mobile hunting stand.
Okay, that's well said.
Move. And he was operating it.
He was operating
and
the mobile.
I was doing most of the looking out for the deer, and he was kind of watching which way he would go to, you know, on that, out through them woods. And, man, we were easing. around looking, and a big old buck come across there. And before I could get out the side window of that shooting house, that mobile shooting house, a sure enough one come out behind him. He was long as a truck bed. And I had that 870 with them double aughts in it with that 30-inch modified, and I squeezed off one. And Johnny said, "You got him." And we went out there and got that deer. And before we could get back to town with him, that deer done almost come alive. We had to whoop him down with a limb,
Oh.
or something. I don't remember what it was. But we went to town. The deer, he had about
Y'all was in a
16
long bed pickup truck. I remember that. And that
No, it was a long bed shooting house.
I mean a shooting house. I'm sorry. Y'all was in a long bed mobile shooting house.
Yeah.
And that deer filled up the back of that pickup bed, that mobile shooting house bed. We gonna get in trouble
That's the
now.
biggest deer I ever seen.
I believe that deer. It was big as a mule. I can tell you that.
Yeah. His nose was like 5 inches wide.
It was a big one. It was a big one. All right, now Newnan, deer hunting changed. You know.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you remember the first food plot? I don't even remember when they first started planting food plots and getting up in the tree, waiting on them to come out in the food plots. But that's when hunting changed a lot. Then it wasn't no real hunters like y'all,
Yeah.
you know, and it's not many today. It is a few. It's a few still enjoy being a woodsman and enjoying the hunt and enjoying out there, but it's not like it used to be.
Well, the first experience I got with any food plots was up at Nina Hill Hunting Club. They started planting a few plots, and which Randy Daly and I was in that club. I guess you call it a club. It's a hunting group.
Yeah.
That's when the transition was changing over, you know. From it was still dog hunting, but they planting like a power line.
Yeah.
And I remember going there and sitting a time or two, but I never did. That really didn't excite me, just sitting in a tree waiting on a deer. And then down there at the Pine Barren Hunting Club, the first stand we put down there was just an old piece of wood up in an oak tree.
Yeah.
With an old wood ladder. That tree's still there. But it's an old board hanging out of it where that used to be. That was my first really experience.
That could be the first climbing stand in Wilcox County.
Wilcox County, Alabama, that is. And it might have been the first one in the whole state.
Yeah. Mhm. Well,
We're
the
still
deer,
hunting with a shotgun, though.
the way people hunt deer now has changed. But deer hunting really, if you know, the definition of deer hunting to me as an old man is still the way y'all used to do it. Getting in the woods, one-on-one with the animal, in their habitat.
Right.
When you went and stalked a deer, and sometimes it would take y'all a week. I remember Randy got on one time.
That.
It took him a week to get that deer, but when he got that deer,
Yeah, it was
he had earned
fulfillment.
Yeah, it really was, and that was real deer hunting back in those days.
Now, this is just my opinion, but to me, sitting in a shooting house, waiting on a deer to come out there on a pile of corn, that ain't deer hunting.
No, I agree with you on that.
That's just my opinion.
That's my opinion too.
And it's people now.
But now, if people want to do it, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it.
This people 30-something years old and 40-something years old. That's the only way they've ever hunted.
They don't know. They
or maybe older than that.
But you said it a while ago, Newnan, to hunt like y'all used to hunt, to be outdoorsmen like y'all are, you have to have some kind of patience.
That's right.
And that's what's lacking in today's world. Nobody has patience. Everybody wants something
They
right
want
now.
instant results.
That's right. But now let's switch to turkeys now, because that is your love. That's what you love more than anything. You were brought up turkey hunting. Now talk about how you got started turkey hunting. you are a legend in the turkey woods in Wilcox County. So let's go
right.
all the way back to when you first started.
8
turkey.
years old.
8 years old. So that's
Fall,
almost 60
maybe
years
9 years
ago.
old it was.
That's 50-something years ago.
And Daddy, like I'm telling you now, it was all hardwood, up and down those nice hills and hollows. And Daddy decided we're going to start doing some turkey hunting because it was turkeys all over the woods in the fall. And he carried me out there. And sure enough, one day he called a whole drove up, and they come over that hill. And I think when they come over that hill, they look like ostriches to me. Or emus. I was just a little bit of runt, and I shot that turkey. And Daddy got one too. We killed 2 gobblers that day.
Now that was in the fall.
That was in the fall.
Now,
that was the most proud thing it ever was.
You learned how to turkey hunt in the fall of the year. Now
in
what?
The fall.
This was long.
This
what
was
kind of call?
1964. This was 3 or 4.
Now, what kind of turkey calls did they have back in those days? Do you remember the turkey call?
The only kind of call we had used was a ML length. They call it a Joni slate. It was just a little, about 3.5 inches long and about 2.5 inches wide. Had a little square, about a 1.5 by 1.5, about 3 inches long peg with a peg coming out. It was a slate.
But it was a lynch?
A lynch,
yeah.
ML lynch. I still got that yelper.
Okay.
And the only other kind of yelpers I saw back then was a wing bone.
Yeah, I remember my Uncle S.C. Capel making those wing bone yelpers.
And Daddy used to have to go to work, and he would make sure sometimes I got to go turkey hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Post school, I loved it so much. And it was a black fella out in Camden named Squareback Williams.
I remember Squareback.
And all he had was the old wing bone. And he had on them coveralls about like them blue ones like you had. We'd go out there, he'd carry me out there turkey hunting in them hills. Wasn't that nice? I mean, I don't remember us ever getting one, but he'd carry me out there, but made sure he got me back and where I could go to school that morning.
All right, let's see. JC said he got a cedar box call that my grandpa made back in the 50s and 60s. We were talking about the wing bone turkey calls, Newnan. And I remember my Uncle S.C. Capel making those wing bone turkey calls. And go ahead now.
But the wing bone turkey calls, they wasn't nothing you bought in the store. That was off a turkey you killed and you dried the bone. And you cut them off, except that big one had that on the end, and you hollow it out, and thick wire down in it, and you dried them out, and it'd be like 3 pieces of it. It'd be about, that long. And you had to work at it, but you could make a pretty good turkey.
Now, I remember Mr. William Harris making the first snuff box turkey calls, and now they had to be a certain size snuff box. And he had everybody, every turkey hunter in the Black Belt had a William Harris snuff box turkey call.
He gave them away.
All it was a condom and a snuff box and a rubber band wrapped around.
And it had half the lid cut out.
You had to, it was a trick to blowing one of those things.
I couldn't do it.
Really?
It tickled my lip. I never could. That's the only kind of yelp I never mastered. That and a leaf. I never could do a leaf.
I never will forget.
I could call them with just my mouth.
I remember me and Joe Langford and Joe King were riding around that old 67 Valiant. We were going down the Nina Hill Club Road, that dirt road between the Gramping Hill that come out down there at Jake Harper's house. And we saw a gobbler go across the road, and we didn't spook him, he walked across the road. Joe King got out of that car, he went down in that creek bed, and I don't know what kind of leaf he got off the bank, and he rolled that thing up, and he he called that gobbler up. We didn't shoot him, but he wanted to prove to us that he could call that gobbler up with a leaf. He did that. Now, Joe King.
All them King fellas used to be real good turkey hunters, and they used leaves.
Yeah.
That's what they were brought up doing.
Well, back in those days, you just had to
Yeah.
you had to use what you had. Now,
Yeah.
okay, now it's another story that I want to ask you about that I have heard all my life, and I don't know if it's fact or fiction. But I remember you at one time, and you was going through a time in your life where you thought you wanted to just be a hermit and live in the woods. And you stayed in those woods, Newnan, for what, 6 months, something like
Well,
that?
I don't know. It'd be from about 1st of October to about the 1st of May.
And I remember somebody, it might have been Randy, told me you used to roost a turkey in that Pine Barren Creek swamp.
I did it
And
twice.
spend the night under the tree with the turkey. Did you really do
I
that?
did that on 2 different occasions, but it wasn't real cold, and I could not get out without spooking that turkey out of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
I think the moon was out to come up. It was like, and the leaves was real dry. It just wasn't no way to make it out. I said, well, I ain't hungry. I ain't got really nothing to do. I'm gonna just curl up here and go to sleep.
And you wasn't going to shoot him out the tree?
No, if I was going to shoot him out of the tree, I'd have done it in the afternoon. I wasn't going to do that. But he really wasn't close enough to shoot out of the tree, but he was close enough to see me if I moved. But, you know, back then that was just the way it was.
Yeah.
I did that one time at Pine Barren, and I did it the other time up at Newnan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, turkey hunting back in those days too, Newnan, was y'all used to turkey hunt. You know, you'd get up before day and go listen for the turkey, but to call that turkey up, and it's still like that nowadays.
In the spring,
but now y'all didn't have decoys. You didn't have those high-powered shotgun shells.
No.
You had to hunt them. You had to actually hunt turkeys.
And we'd hunt turkey. I killed more turkeys with a 16 gauge than I have with any other gun I ever had in my life. That's when I was in high school. I've killed a lot of turkeys since then, but you call a turkey up 20 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't none of that 80-yard shoot at the turkey way out there with them big old shells they got now.
Yeah.
But you'd call the turkey right up to you, and if you didn't, you let him go. You wouldn't wing no turkey, you know, trying to shoot at him too far.
It was a sport. It was something. It was a challenge. It was a challenge to get one-on-one with a turkey or a deer and actually hunt them. It just wasn't. It wasn't an ambush, and it wasn't a kill. It was actually a hunt.
But turkey hunting still excites me.
Yeah.
A lot of things used to excite me that don't no more, but that does.
Well, I tell you what, Newnan, what we need to do, we need to have more stories and talk to these kids. These kids need to be introduced to the woods and the outdoors like we were.
Right.
I mean, nowadays they go and they all got four-wheelers. They don't ever get out and walk in the woods. Tell that story about how you used to leave your house and go hunt.
We over in Alabama, in rural Wilcox County, Alabama. We live kind of in a valley. You look over across the Greenville Highway, and you could see that line of grappling hills up there. And when you come up, I'd leave the house on Sunday afternoon after we got out of church and ate lunch. I was like 14, 15 years old. And I would leave the house walking across that road down there. I'd go up that bottom, go down there. They had an old L&N railroad track down there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd cross that railroad track, then I'd cross a creek down there called Pursley Creek, and I'd get up in them hills, and I'd liable to cover 12 miles that afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd usually come in that evening before dark with a turkey.
Now, and as you was traveling and covering that 12 miles, you were stalking,
Right,
you were stopping and listening. Tell them again how you did that.
You just you ease along. You try to stay on a road or something. You didn't want to just walk down through the dry leaves. If you want to try to stay on the old path or something where it was kind of a little flatter, where the wasn't as noisy. You had to learn how to walk and stalk, but you'd stop and listen, and you do your ears up like this, you could hear a lot further, a lot better. And you could hear them turkeys scratching.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh boy, we got turkeys, we got turkeys. Well,
Now
I got turkeys. And then you just stand there and wait a little bit. If they started getting a little closer, you might ease up just a little bit. They sounded like they was far enough where you could move just a little bit and get a little closer. And then you'd sit down inside a big old tree and just sit there and wait.
Maybe hit that yelp a time or two.
Yeah, might hit the yelp. Sometimes you get lucky and call the whole drove up. But sometimes you had to just wait. And a lot of the tactics back then was scatter a drove.
Mm-hmm. That was in the fall of the year.
That's in the fall of the year. And I'm going to tell you something. A lot of people don't realize if you scattered a drove before the sun started going down, they going to get back together.
Yeah.
And this is no joke. I seen turkeys getting back together at night when the moon was shining.
Mm-hmm.
They be yapping and flying and flopping. The turkeys didn't like being alone. Most of them was young gobblers.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to be in a drove, you know. They had never been off by themselves. I reckon that's just their nature.
Well, Newnan, this has been fun, man. I appreciate you. We got to do this more often. We got to do this. We need to start spreading all our old stories, the oral history of hunting in Wilcox County. We've lost Randy.
Yeah.
You know, we've got so many.
We've lost a lot of them.
We've lost a lot of them. We need to start doing this on a regular basis and putting it out here where people can see how it really used to be, because there's no history book out there that talks about hunting them Gramping Hills for turkeys, hunting Nina Hill Hunting Club, hunting the Pine Barren Hunting Club back in the 70s and 80s. We need to share all these stories we can share with people, and we got Johnny Wilson. He's still kicking.
Yeah.
Larry Abernathy. We need to get him down. He used to hang out.
There was another one I used to hunt a lot of, especially fall turkey hunting, was R.J. Bright.
R.J. Bright, a boy, woo, could he tell? He's in the river right now trying to catch a crappie. But and Tommy Lawler. Tommy Lawler was a good hunter.
I guarantee you.
I never forget the story when he first started filming turkeys. You remember him and Randy? And tell me if this is true, because Tommy tells this all the time.
You come out with them camcorders.
Yeah, he had a camcorder. Him and Randy got in it made them a little homemade stand, you know, and they had the camera, and they would go film them turkeys out in the field, in the ground. Yeah. And they said they filmed it, they yelped, turkeys put a show on. He's probably still got the video.
Yeah.
But they had cut the camera off and were fixing to go out the woods. And they said, you popped up out the middle of the field and covered yourself up with leaves and said, did y'all get them videos? Is that true?
It's pretty close. Pretty close. I don't know if I was in the middle of the field, but I was on the edge there.
Newnan Hall, I tell you what, Newnan, we can write a book, man, but we ain't gonna write no book. We're gonna start sitting on the porch and telling these stories. When you coming back?
Oh, right after Thanksgiving.
Okay,
well, ain't far off.
No, you come back, we'll sit on the porch, and maybe reckon we can get R.J. Bryder to sit up here with us.
I don't know. We might have to go down to the vanilla mill.
We can do that. But anyhow, we're going to try to do this more often, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. We got to go. We got some catfish and crappie to go eat tonight at Joe Allen Dunn's house. but I just wanted to sit here with Newnan and tell some old stories and how it used to be back in the old days. And we got a good crowd on here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Let's see, we had a little Alan Cooks tuned in, Randy Bell. We had a good crowd on here, and I really do appreciate y'all listening to this. And on the porch with BDL and Newnan Hall, it was a lot of fun. I don't think the internet dropped the time, but Newnan, thank you for doing this, man. I really do appreciate it. Let's do it again.
We're gonna do it again.
Let's think of some stories, some show enough stories to share with them next time.
We got stories to tell. Probably we ain't never told.
We might have to just do a game warden show one time on how we used to, let's see what kind of word, how we used to fence with the game warden, deal with them, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's another subject for
That's
another
right.
day,
That's
all
another subject for another day.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. I saw Captain Troy was tuned in. He needs to bring us some of them Porterville Bay oysters
man,
up here.
sure
He's gonna come up. He'll be
things.
up here hunting night. He might bring a youth season comes in next weekend.
the 14th.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and Monday.
Then
4 days for the youth.
And then they are.
And then
regular
the regular
21st.
season will be in. So, yeah, we will do it again. I promise you, Randy Bell, we'll do it again. On the porch with BDL. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Newnan, thank you, my friend.